And so, to fix the gaze unwaveringly on truth, on the divine, on the self, on the purity of love. Words don't matter. To fix the gaze on God, on the Mother, without even knowing what that means. And this part is so very important, that you cannot know what it means. The surrender that is so profound is to fix the gaze upon what you cannot know, a goal that is completely and utterly out of the range of possible understanding. How profound, how profound. And this is surrender. To fix the gaze, following a depth of longing without knowing where it is leading. As the finer and finer feelings of the being start to open, and the knowing is what is lighting the way. These finer and finer feelings that are pure and unattached to any object start to become enlivened. The fine feelings of the being, knowing itself, and the intelligence of that, the creative divine intelligence of that knowing, starting to wake up to itself. So that what starts off as a longing, where there is someone that is following a longing into the unknown, becomes so fine and so pure that there is no one longing, that the longing is just an aliveness, and that alive longing is a quality of devotion that is pure, where there is no one that is devoted to anything, but this aliveness is the aliveness of the heart, the aliveness of the being flowing within itself, just like a river is flowing only one way, flowing towards the ocean, flowing towards its source, flowing towards what it truly belongs to. And this is the flow of pure devotion, which is in utter surrender to itself, without any objective understanding. A purity of devotion, a simplicity, where the gaze is one-pointedly fixed upon truth, upon God, upon the divine. And nothing will keep you from that purity, from that pull. Nothing of the world, nothing personal could possibly take you away from the pull of divinity into itself, the purity of devotion, the purity of the self, just longing for its own fullness. And for that to awaken through the form which feels like you. How profound, how profound. That it's not a you or a me that awakens, it is the self itself, but it is longing to experience its own purity and divinity through the form that is you. It is longing to shine its light in the heart that feels like your heart, and yet it never has been your heart. It has always been the heart of God. So everything is just being realigned, reoriented, so that the knowing is what is shining, and it is not the misunderstanding that is shining. Reprioritizing, redirecting love to what love truly is. That love is unconditioned. Love has no personal flavor in any way, because it's so all-encompassing in its unconditional nature that it does not fragment. It does not need to. It does not need to, because it knows the fullness of itself in its entirety, in its totality, and it never ever disrupts that perfection in any way. It is so pure, 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 pure all the way through. And the longing, we could say, of every heart is to know that, because that is the true nature of all beings. To know the unquestionable belonging to the one being, and for that one being to blossom, to open to its divine nature all the way through, all the way through. Mm-hmm. So this purity of devotion is a quality of surrender that we start to learn on the surface of life as life knocks us around. All the bumps and challenges, all the humblings that happen on the surface of life are preparing us to be granted a purity of devotion, a purity of love. We cannot choose it. We are granted it once we come into a quality of being. This is why we have to be humbled on the surface of life. This is why we have to be tossed around, so that all the conditioned habits that can pull the attention, all the things that the me thinks is important, start to be diminished, so that what is truly important can shine. The priority of every human life is to know the self, for the self to know itself, we could say, through the form that is you. Self already knows itself. The purpose of the human life is for this knowing to shine at the point that is you. And so as there is an opening to being the infinite, timeless field, you know yourself as the infinite. You know yourself as every point in the infinite field. And when you know yourself as the infinite and every illumined, awakened point of the infinite field, then you know what this singular point is. You know what the singular point belongs to. And that the singular point that has felt to be me has never been separate, has never ever been separate from the whole. There has never been division or fragmentation in any way, only in the mind of the me. And this is the great misunderstanding. It is the great misunderstanding that is in the process of being redirected. There has been no mistake. It is just love redirecting its flow back to its source so it can know where it has come from, know what it belongs to, know its true nature, and then can shine through your form as the infinite divine, not diminished in any way, but a perfect blueprint of the divine, emanating love, shining as the full beaming effulgence of divinity through your form. Yes, through your form. What magnificence! What a magnificent possibility of this human life. What a magnificent possibility is being offered to even have an inkling that this is possible. The inkling that it is possible is the longing in your heart, is the knowing that it's already alive, because that knowing already knows who you are. It already knows what you are. You already know yourself. It is just a little charade on the surface of life where love plays out a small dance, all the while deeply knowing the largesse of true nature. Longing, longing, longing for the infinite dance, to infinitely flow as the true being. And yet the small dance is divinity too. The small dance, every single fiber of everything is divinity itself. Of course, we do not know that until we come to know the source. It is only through knowing the source that we come to recognize what everything belongs to. Once this knowing is in place, then the dance of the flow of consciousness is to discover itself in absolutely everything. To illuminate that knowing in every single corner, nook and cranny, every single hidden dark place, for everything to be illuminated in exactly the same divine shining way. That is what is in process. It's such glory, such incredible glory. And the miracle is you do not have to do a single thing. The only invitation of the divine is to keep your gaze fixed, to keep your gaze firmly fixed on the only thing that matters. Do not lose the focus that is true, the focus that is truth itself. Do not lose the focus upon what is true. It is the only thing that the divine asks, is point your gaze towards what you are longing for without knowing what that means, what that looks like, what that means for my life, because there are miracles waiting to happen that are beyond the possibility of all understanding. You are that miracle. You are that miracle. How can you possibly know the miracle that you are if the attention is gazed upon the smallness of controlling, holding a position, and always needing to know? How can we possibly know the infinite possibility that is waiting in the pure potentiality of pure power if we are keeping a narrow focus that we are trying to control? Only this, only this, only what I know, only what I want, only what makes me feel safe. And then all the moaning about how unsatisfactory life is, all the moaning and groaning about how I'm not able to create the abundance that I need, how I'm not able to have the kind of success that I want. But of course, if the dance is the small dance of control, then the infinite field of possibility is not available. It's not available. It's only available when you are in your infinite nature, when all the laws of nature can flow unimpeded and anything and everything can be offered. But of course, then there is no me that wants. The me has become completely aligned with the divine will. But any notion that comes in as a true longing, a true desire, if that is aligned with God's desire, then it will come forward. It is one of the miracles, one of the many miracles that are waiting to happen. When you are aligned with the divine nature, the field of infinite possibility is so wildly alive And anything is possible. But we could say it has to be the divine will. It cannot be the will of someone that wants for me in order to control and in order to protect. That will never be granted. Although we could say that sometimes some of those wishes are granted. Some of those wishes will be granted. But it can give a false sense of security to the me. It can give a false sense of security that we can start to create intentions and affirmations and mood boards and all these kinds of groovy things that give the me the possibility of creating the life that me wants. But it is then to notice that at some point it starts to fail. It starts to fail when the me is using that as a way to stay protected and small. But when we are aligned with the divine will, anything is possible. But what is possible is beyond the mind's imagining. It is beyond any possible control. We find ourselves living all sorts of wildness. All sorts of wildness. Miracles, miracles, just waiting to burst into light. The me will always be disappointed. It's a strategy of the divine, so that the me starts asking the deeper questions, so that the me starts asking questions that are actually meaningful. Because this life has a pure and true meaning. And that pure, true meaning is to know the self, to know the divine nature, to know God, to know the Divine Mother. Whatever words we use, it does not matter. But it is to go all the way. That is the meaning and purpose of this life, is to go all the way into yourself, all the way where no stone is unturned and everything is shining with the same light, and dance of equals, so that there is a seamless, unfragmented quality to the whole of life. When the being knows itself, the knowing is the light of awareness that is ever shining, has ever been shining, the eternal light. The eternal light that is ever, ever shining. As itself, divinity is luminous, luminous, shining light, the divine light that has always been shining, has never ever been diminished or dimmed in any way. And as the being knows itself through just being, simply being, the presence that is omnipresent to itself, that is infinite and unbounded. And it all starts with the feeling of yourself just simply being here now, being here now, feeling the simplicity of your own existence, recognizing that that simple feeling of your own existence is existence itself. It is not an individual, personal existence. It is the purity of existence itself that is present to its own presence is illuminated in its knowing, infinitely knowing itself, awake to itself at every single point in the infinite field. It is a surrender of the singular point, a surrender of the singular point that feels to be me into the infinity of your true self. The infinite field is illuminated equally everywhere. And so as you come to the feeling of yourself just being here, you feel yourself infinitely and boundlessly everywhere simultaneously. You cannot find yourself at a singular location because you are not at a singular location. And when there is a dropping of the I thought and the identification with the mind body, just through feeling your own presence here now, you feel the infinity of your own nature, uncontained, unlimited, boundless freedom. You are the freedom. You are not someone having an experience of freedom in this moment that comes and goes. You are the eternal freedom. This is the true nature. This is who you always are. The singular point, that is an experience that comes and goes. Your infinite nature is eternally here now, eternally infinite and unbounded, timeless being, just being, simply being. So you feel yourself here now and you open to the vast, infinite field of infinity. You surrender the singular point of me into the infinite field, and you find the awakeness of the infinite field is your own awakeness. It's not the awakeness of someone, it is the awakeness of the alive field that is awake to itself absolutely everywhere, shining in and of itself absolutely everywhere. And you are the shining field. You are the shining, boundless, vast realms of consciousness. There are no edges. There are no boundaries. There is nothing containing anything. So you know yourself. You are still, unmoving presence. And in this recognition, you know without question that you never have been a singular point that is a person. No, never. You know without question that you have always been the unbounded field, that you are the eternal being. It is your true nature. It is the truth of who you are. And the self awakens to itself. Consciousness awakens to itself. There's no me involved here. There's no person involved here. There's no mind involved here. The self itself awakens to its own awakeness. Here now, right now. This is who you are. This is who you have always been. And the knowing is the aliveness. The being itself, infinitely being itself equally everywhere, not finding itself at any particular point, because it is finding its infinity, awake to itself everywhere, infinitely knowing itself, and then feeling its infinite nature. I am everywhere. I am openness. I am freedom. I am pure awareness. I am pure consciousness. I am stillness. I am silence. I am freedom. I am peace. I am being, just being. Who? The being itself. There's no one here. The true direct experience is not an experience that comes and goes. The experience that comes and goes is being a me. When you know your true nature, you recognize the stillness, the infinite, unbounded field is never, ever moving away from itself. It is eternally being itself. We could say within the wilderness of consciousness, within this vast, gorgeous landscape of consciousness, consciousness itself is journeying ever deeper into itself. This is the true journey. This is the gorgeousness. Is consciousness itself diving into the deeper and deeper, purer, illuminated realms of itself, flowing within itself, coming to know itself in and as everything, loving itself, dispelling all delusion, and deepening, 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 flowing into an ever purer value of itself. And as the being flows into deeper and deeper values of itself, the divine qualities start to be recognized. They have the same words as the moods and emotions that the me has known, but the divine qualities are pure. They are unconditioned and they are causeless. They are not attached to objects. So we speak of the love that is pure and unconditioned. It wants nothing, it needs nothing. It is utterly pure, loving itself in and as everything, never wavering, never ever wavering. Peace that is undisturbable. It is beyond quiet or tranquility. Peace is the unmoving silence of the self-recognizing its unmoving, unchanging nature. Abiding peace, a peace that is undisturbable. And of course, the causeless joy and happiness and delight that is the effervescent nature of the self reveling in itself. Awe, wonder of the self just being astonished, utterly astonished, awe, inspired, wonder at its own magnificence, at its own beauty. And of course, this all includes the singular point that you have known to be me. The singular point is included in the infinite field. And so everything is felt equally everywhere, but it is illuminated at the singular point, because the singular point becomes like an antenna, right? So the infinite, once it knows itself, it knows and has access to everything in the whole field. Between infinity and the singular point, it is the living Vade, it's the field of divine intelligence. All of the flows and movements, all of the divine movements are shining as the intelligence. And then this whole field of intelligence is completely available. Completely available. So it is not to imagine that when you know yourself as infinity, that suddenly you do not feel this form. You do. You feel it more than ever. You feel it more sensitive than ever. It's the most sensitive antennae for the whole field of infinity. But you are feeling the whole of the infinite field equally as it illuminates and sees more of itself. The knowing is illuminated on the surface of life and is coming to live its fullness through the form that is you. So, one of the great misperceptions is that there is a me that is in the process of awakening. What is actually happening is the divine is taking you over. The divine is coming for you. Love is coming for you. Because the divine wants your form. The divine needs your form in order to experience its fullness. It is the divine that has been longing for you all along. Your longing is the felt sense of the divine's desire for you. The mother, the divine mother, wants your form so that she can live on the surface of life, so that the holiness, the sacredness, the purity that is true divinity can be lived on the surface of life. So she is working you. She is refining you. She is recalibrating you. She is preparing you so that you can receive her Shakti flows and you can shine and be in service to her on the surface of life. You see, this has never been about the me. This has never been about someone getting somewhere or getting something. This has always been about her. Always, always been about her. Always been about God. Always, always been about the supreme divine coming to the surface of life. And so you start to feel, the consciousness of this, to feel that you're just a cog in a huge mechanism of consciousness, that there's nothing personal here. Perhaps you can start to feel the movement and power of the flow of Shakti that flows in and as everything, and how everything that is moving is healing and transforming, recalibrating, so that more purity can come to the surface of life, in service, of course, in utter service, in order to dispel delusion, in order to bring all of the shadows into the light, so that the Supreme can be known as the Supreme, reigning Supreme, true sovereignty, divine sovereignty on the surface of life. It is what the age of enlightenment is all about. The age of enlightenment is not about little old me having a divine experience and trying to sell it on the surface of life. The age of enlightenment is, we could say, the dissolution of all delusion, all ignorance, all shadow into the light. It is the collective awakening that is happening. It does not belong to anybody. And this knowing is actually a very important part of the process of maturing. Because as long as there is a me that wants something for me, there is actually not the maturity to even have a single pointed gaze, right? Can you see that? That if there's a me that wants something, then the gaze is not single pointed, because it is being distracted by wants and needs and desires. But all of that is in the process of being eroded away. All of that is in the process of being humbled away, so that the focus can be so truly, purely one-pointed, so that the gaze can be towards truth. The gaze can be towards the divine and only the divine. You can meet yourself in this gaze, because only when the self meets itself fully in this gaze is there an explosion is there an explosion of illumination that is called clear seeing. And it is in the moment of surrender, in a moment of pure divine surrender, that this explosion happens. We could say there are many qualities of explosion that can happen. There can be deep and clear and wild explosions, or there can be just mini explosions, little mini earthquakes. But every single opening is an opening that is clearing something. It is bushwhacking the jungle of the mind's quagmire, that is the Maya, is bushwhacking through all of that in order that the focus can become so one-pointed towards the divine. So that the purpose of this human life can be truly fulfilled. True fulfillment is awakening to true nature, is the complete surrender of the me into its infinite nature and being carried through the flow of consciousness to the supreme source of all. And as the gaze becomes so one-pointed, there are deeper and deeper qualities of turning inward. And this is where these fine feelings of devotion, pure devotion, come in. Pure devotion, where there is no one in devotion to anything. That pure devotion is a flow. It is a flow of the being surrendering into itself. Qualities of divine surrender. Qualities of divine surrender. Where there is no one surrendering, but the being itself is surrendering into itself, into deeper and deeper values of not knowing. A purity of devotion that says, yes, yes, take me all the way. I have no idea where you are taking me. I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but take me, Ma, all the way into you. Let every breath be your breath. Let this form be the form that nourishes only you. Let every action be for you. Let every be prostration to you. Let all love be love flowing into itself, into its own effulgent knowing. That there is a bowing again and again of pure devotion into itself without knowing what that could possibly look like. But there's no one that cares. There's no one that needs to feel safe or no one that needs to control. It is letting go, swimming away from the edge of the pool completely and utterly, jumping into the ocean, leaving your clothes on the beach and just swimming into the vast depths, not worrying about drowning, not worrying about being saturated, because the deepest knowing of the heart is that you are drowning into love, that you are drowning into the divine, that you're drowning into a full saturation of divine light. Where breath, worldly breath, is not needed in the same way. Because you are living on the light of God. You are living as a flow of pranic source energy. Of course, that pranic source energy breathes the form as long as the form needs to breathe. But you are no longer dependent. You are no longer dependent on what my life on the surface of life looks like. You are no longer dependent upon anything at all, because you are animated and lived so fully by your divine nature. You are in service. You are in submission. You are the divine light in divine surrender to itself again and again and again. So as these words come, you can feel You feel the resonance of what is being spoken, that there are no instructions here. There is nothing to follow here. It is just to find yourself in the resonance. Find yourself in the resonance that says, yes, 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 this I am. This is the flow of your own divine nature into itself. So you find yourself wherever you find yourself. There is no one measuring. There is no one watching you. There is no one finding out if you're doing it right or wrong. You are just in the river and you are being carried into the ocean of bliss. Bliss is the true nature. Bliss is the bliss of being. And as these words come, it is just to receive the gorgeous bliss that is the nectar of yourself, utterly free, utterly here now. That it is just to let go into yourself. You are a mirror. You are a mirror, and the world is your reflection, right? So it is to receive your reflection right now. Receive your reflection right now. So if there are thoughts and opinions and ideas coming in as your reflection, then great glory. This is what you get to work with. But if your reflection is the shining light of the bliss of the self, then revel in the bliss of the self. Revel in your divine nature. Revel in the glory that you are. Revel in the divine revelation that you are the self you always have been. You have never, ever been away from yourself. You are the great glory that is always shining. And the invitation of the divine is to say, be yourself, be here now, meet yourself, meet the deepest value of yourself that you can touch into, and drink the nectar of your sweetness. Drink the nectar of your own knowing. However that flavor is tasted, drink the nectar of your knowing. Drink it in. And let the nectar of your knowing carry you deeper and deeper in to the unfathomable beauty that is the miracle that you are, your eternal, infinite nature. There is not someone that needs to be a certain way. It is to let go entirely of all conformity, all need to be seen as anything or anyone. It is a complete surrender of all normalness into the wildness, into the wild landscape of your blissful, gorgeous, infinite being. Be free, be free, be yourself here now. Feel the edges of the container busting open. Feel the edges of the container breaking free. And you know yourself as the infinite. You are infinite, unbounded. And once you have broken free into the infinite, boundless, uncontained being, you are like a wild horse that is just galloping and galloping in utter freedom in the landscape of consciousness. You cannot tame a wild horse. A wild horse is always going to be a wild horse. So be the wild horse, galloping in the infinite, unbounded freedom of yourself. You do not need to be tamed. You cannot squidge all of your infinite self back into the container of the body mind. You can try, but you cannot fit it in because it's found its infinite nature. It's found its freedom. So stretch Stretch into your infinite nature and feel that wildness. Feel that unboundedness. Feel the wild horse of your being just galloping, 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 galloping in utter joy, in utter delight, in utter awe, right? The one that has been caged, the one that has been bound, has discovered that there never has been a rope. You never were a tamed small self. You have always been a wild, wild, unabandoned, free being. You are wholeness. You are pure. You are innocent, immaculate being. You have never, ever been anything other than your infinite, eternal, pure self. So it is to feel the resonance that knows that. Feel the resonance of yourself that knows. Your knowing is so precious. Your knowing is the precious nectar that carries you deeper into yourself, into the wild, untamed realms of the divine light that is the heart, that is the truth. It is the truth that knows only truth. It is not a truth that has an opposite. It is the pure truth that resonates at a frequency of knowing. You are that truth. You are that wholeness that has never been broken, never been fragmented or divided. You are wholeness that is ever whole, ever perfect. And it is just to receive your own perfection, to receive your own beauty. It takes humility to receive your own perfection. It takes the humility to let go of that story of unworthiness, to let go of that story of brokenness, and to recognize that all of those feelings are divine feelings anyway. That your brokenness was only a setup to carry you into your vulnerability, into the vulnerability that opens to the vast infinite field that is ever open and ever free. The mind would call it vulnerability. The being would call it freedom. So, receive yourself. Receive your divine nature. Feel the purity of your divine nature, the purity of true devotion that does not want or need. It does not land on anything. It is not a devotion that has an object. It is devotion that is a pure flow of surrender. And that pure flow of surrender is what carries you deeper and deeper into your divine nature. Not you, someone, you, the divine being, you, the one divine being that is just longing for its utter fullness. The invitation to your own flowering, the invitation to experience the exquisite fragrance of your divine nature. How profound you are. How profound you are. So the feeling of yourself can be a felt sense of being everywhere. The first feeling of yourself is the feeling of being an open witness, a presence consciousness that is witnessing, able to witness and watch itself. But the witness itself wakes up to its own infinite nature, so that the witness becomes everywhere. So then we are speaking of a pure awareness that is aware of itself, infinitely aware of itself. So you might feel, that felt sense might feel like stillness, silence, openness. It might feel like emptiness. So we're just using these words to bring a possibility of recognizing and stabilizing what you are noticing. Because all of the words that come are not going to apply to everyone. And sometimes there can be a distraction where the mind comes in and says, oh, I'm not experiencing that. But you're not going to experience everything that is being spoken. You are going to experience what is available to you. And what is available to you is perfection. You are right where you need to be. You are exactly, perfectly, divinely yourself, according to the laws of nature that are uniquely being orchestrated for your perfect unfolding. Where you are is perfect. As soon as you want to be somewhere else, you are away from yourself, right? This is so important and so simple. So you might feel yourself as the presence, as stillness. You might feel yourself as the unmoving. And this might be the dominant quality of feeling your own nature. You might feel yourself as the aliveness, the knowing that is alive. You could feel yourself still and alive at the same time. But the feeling is that what you are recognizing is yourself. This is what's important, that you're not having an experience, that the felt sense is this is yourself, that yourself is not limited to the mind body, that yourself is everywhere, that yourself is stillness, that yourself is silence. So some will feel more of a stillness and a silence, the unmoving. Some will feel more of a flow of aliveness, of the knowing. Some will be able to access both simultaneously and be in the seamless dance of the pure, aware silence and its dynamic flow simultaneously. Some will feel that self in what we could say, what would seem to be objects. You can feel yourself in things, can see your reflection in things. We're going to stop there. There's more, but we're going to stop there. In all of that, you can access your divine nature. You could feel yourself as emptiness. You can feel yourself as fullness. You can feel yourself as wholeness. You can feel yourself as openness. You can feel yourself as nothing. You can feel yourself as pure existence. You can feel yourself as non-existent. You can feel yourself as being here now. You can feel yourself as not being, a non-existent, non-being. What is the substance of that? You can feel yourself as divine light, shining, shining, shining. You can feel yourself as an effulgent wholeness. You can feel yourself as love that is magnetically pulled to itself. Loving, loving, loving. You can feel yourself as peace. More of the value of silence and stillness, the peace. a contentment, an okayness, a deep sinking into this. Can feel yourself as this animated, alive energy of Shakti that's wild and flowing and powerful, illuminating, moving, right? All of these qualities are possible. So we could say what comes and goes is experience. That is true. And yet these qualities are not worldly experience. They're qualities of consciousness experiencing itself, deepening into itself. But the value of what you find yourself as here now is what is important. It's to know that as there is an opening in consciousness, different values and qualities will come in as consciousness opens to itself and tastes different flows and flavors of itself. Yummy, delicious gorgeousness. So it is never to try to hang on to anything. It is to be yourself exactly as you are. Because this is where the intelligence of how the mechanics of consciousness know itself and come to recognize fuller and fully values of itself start to be revealed. That you never land anywhere. You do not position yourself anywhere because you are ever open, ever open. Essentially, in the deepest sense, you are the stillness of the unmoving being that is ever free. But as that being, you are open to different values of yourself, coming in and through, clearing, purifying. And in that openness, you are too ever open to the flows that flow on the surface of life. And that's where you start to see that the surface of life is just a denser quality of the landscape of consciousness. That the world is a divine orchestration to carry you into deeper and deeper knowing. Your knowing is the nectar. Do not leave your knowing. Let your attention be firmly fixed with your knowing, but softly fixed as an effulgent, still, silent, alive recognition, the recognition of yourself, the recognition of the heart that knows.